Go ahead and call the Safety and Public Properties meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Meany?
Here.
Mr. Pedicino?
Here.
Mr. Russo?
Here. We need the approval of the minutes of April 12, 2017.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes of April 12th, 2017.
Second. Okay, Mr. Pedicino, roll call, please.
Mrs. Meany?
Yes.
Mr. Pedicino?
Yes.
And Mr. Russo?
Yes. It brings us to reports. Item number 1 is jail report for March 2017. Chief Filan.
You have the monthly report in front of you. In answer to Ms. Meany's question from last meeting, 2016 revenue, we are almost 100% collected with the exception of a single $680 bill. That was a billing error on the city's part. We have rebilled, so
Okay.
we'll be at 100% shortly.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
No.
No. Great. Thank you, Chief. Okay, brings us to police and fire issues. Item number 2, there's a memo from Fire Chief Shaw concerning the AM radio station. Chief Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have a memo outlining the condition of the AM, the low-powered AM radio station used by the city in conjunction with the outdoor warning siren system. This equipment was installed in 2000, so it is 17 years old, and over time, one of the transmitting pieces in the AM radio station has failed. Due to the age, the equipment is no longer manufactured, so a new system would be required. We were able to get a quote for a used system, very gently used. It was installed in a city. There was a change in administration. The new administration came in and ordered the equipment taken out, and that is the price of $30,000 for the equipment alone. Before we went ahead and budgeted for that, I wanted to have a discussion, however, as to the effectiveness of the AM radio station. So we put out a survey. As outlined in the memo, the response wasn't overwhelming by any means, but we did get almost 100 back. We got 96 back, as you see. And you see the results that only 4 respondents indicated that they used the AM radio station to receive emergency information from the city. I think back in 2000, some of the social media was not as developed as it is today. There were very few options. I think probably MySpace was one, if you remember that. Mostly the kids used it, that type of thing. Never really caught on with adults and other age groups. It was more for teenagers and that age group. Obviously now we have multiple social media opportunities. We have our Ready Notify system. We have the Alert Me through the city's website, weather radios, all those different types of methods. That seem to be more popular than the AM radio station is currently. So I question whether the value, quite frankly, to the community of investing $30,000 or so into this new equipment. Wanted to bring it up at the meeting and have a discussion and see what the feelings of the safety committee is.
Is it used now?
Well, it's inoperable now. So
No, but I mean, has it been used prior to being inoperable?
It has been used. We would leave it on. It would be simulcasting the National Weather Service NOAA weather radio, and then if there was an alert, if we were using it for an alert, we had the ability to turn that part off and put in our own customized message, which normally happened the first Saturday of every month. We'd put on test message just to exercise the equipment, keep the employees trained on how to go through that process and that type of thing. I think in all the time here, we probably used it back in 2000, 2003 was when we expanded it. So I don't know if it's been used maybe but once or twice, quite frankly, for actual tornado warnings.
Right. And then how long has it been inoperable?
I want to say it was right around Christmas, so end of December, January. We've been working with the vendor, and they came across this used radio station from, I believe it's the city of Cortland.
And then we've only had really one incident since then, right?
Correct. We had the tornado warning end of March when a actual warning went out at about 5:30ish or so in the morning. We did not receive any phone calls of why was the AM radio station not transmitting. There was no indication that any resident really went to that for information. Got a lot of feedback from Facebook posts and Twitter posts and those types of things of, thank you for putting this out and that type of thing, which I think is indicative that, again, while the sample of the survey was small, I think it is indicative of where we are in the community today.
Jeff?
I talked to the chief briefly about it. I still see some value and redundancy of doing it. And I know originally when we did it for tornadoes. But I also thought originally when we did it, we could put other types of warnings, as you do with traffic alerts. You can say tune your radio to AM, whatever it was, 5:30. I think ours is 5:30, to advise people getting off the freeway that there's something going on on Som Center at 43 or somewhere down the road. And because with a lot of these things that we're talking about, when the tornado did hit, TVs went out, internet systems went out, so if you have you might not be able to have access to cell phones, you might not have access to electrical power, if it's a weather emergency. But as you're driving your car, hopefully you're not going to be checking Twitter and Facebook as you're driving. I just thought when we originally purchased it, it was meant to be, it could be all inclusive. We could do it for immediate circumstances that could be broadcast by our traffic signs or something like that says, hey, this is going on. So.
Right. I can say that in 17 years, we've never used it for any traffic alerts, road closures, or anything like that. It was more intended for severe weather. Not to say that we couldn't, it just never had been, quite frankly. You do make a good point about the power going out and TVs being down, and that's why we've always encouraged residents to have a programmable weather radio with a battery backup for that very instance where they could still get the weather alerts and the information and that type of thing. And that's really, in my personal opinion, is the money would be better spent towards marketing, pamphlets, brochures, those types of public education material to encourage residents to go in that direction, to have a weather radio with a battery backup, make sure they check the battery on an annual basis to make sure that it's fresh and operational. Also to sign up for any of the number of electronic methods of notification. So my opinion is that the money would be better spent going down that avenue.
Nancy?
I also spoke, the chief and I also spoke, and, one of my concerns was I have a number of, older residents who aren't, real computer savvy, don't really use a lot of that stuff. But as the chief and I talked, I see his point. I think the weather radio is probably, a good way to go. And I kind of, in ways, concur with him that I'd rather use this $30,000 to maybe send out, some mailings, to the citizens, to, make them aware that, if you do have access, to computers, phones, here's different links you can use to know what's going on, and you'll be notified. If you don't, we recommend you get, like a weather radio, because, unfortunately, like say if the power goes out, I know my radio's plugged into so my radio wouldn't do me, AM radio wouldn't do me any good. I see what you were saying, but if you were in your car, of course, you would be able to get an AM radio. But like I say, for $30,000, is it worth it when obviously your studies have shown that such a small percentage of our citizens are really even utilizing it? I almost wonder if we'd be doing our citizens a better service by kind of, educating, informing, and sending out some mailers, because I know, different situations, up in my area when our water, stopped, and people, calling and what's going on, and unfortunately, City of Cleveland didn't notify us. But, this is a way I'm like, well, you can notify me, you can do this, and then you would know. But a lot of people, still really aren't aware of, I think, things that are, available to them, that the city, if you're on this website or if you're on this, you'll be notified. If you're not, and if you don't have a computer, if you don't have, an iPhone, you know, here's another alternative, which is the weather radio. So I think I would go more towards doing that than spending the 30,000 on upgrading the AM radio. That's just my opinion.
Right. By the way, what was the station number?
Or 5:30.
AM 530,
530.
which what I did not put in the memo does not, because of the low power and the restrictions from the FCC, does not cover the entire community. I know when you get up further north and further south, it's very staticky and very spotty coverage.
So in
So
other
the-
words, we'd be spending this money and we wouldn't be covering the whole city.
Correct.
Would
And
this-
there's really no option to boost that power because it is limited by the FCC. We have such a saturation of radio signals in the greater Cleveland area, so we are limited. So the coverage is consequently, it's limited.
Would the system still work if there was no power? How does it,
What system, which one?
the AM radio system, if there was a power, when we had back in 2003, when we had the power outage, would it continue to work?
Yes, there is a battery backup on that as well as the outdoor warning sirens.
So, like when we had power outage for 2 days and people couldn't charge their cell phones and they didn't have access to computers, that would be a means to disseminate information.
That's correct, but again, his story has shown that very few people realize that and will end up calling their council person or calling 911 to ask when's the power going to come back
Well, they can
on.
try calling the council people, but when there's no power and they have no phones, that won't help them too much either.
Right, right. So I don't know if this is indicative of the effectiveness of the system. So when we had the power outage, water was an issue from
Yep.
Cleveland Water because they didn't have generators on their pumps and those types of things. The city secured an 8,000-gallon tank truck to bring in potable drinking water. We put messages out on the AM radio station. No one showed up. So
I understand what you're saying, Jeff. I just can't see spending that money. Number one, it doesn't cover the whole city, and number two, just, the usage is just minimal.
All right, I can see that, but 90, and you're right, probably more responses would probably be indicative of the way that it is, but I just, everything that I do and something else has redundancy of
Right.
doing things, that no matter if it reaches 40% or 50% of the people, that's 50%. So,
But
I
again,
mean,
we
we've
just
been-
had a situation where there was no responses.
oh, no, you're right, but even with Notify Me, we've pushed Notify Me a lot. And what's our percentage of residents that have actually on Notify Me?
I don't have the numbers of what our subscriber rate is. I do know it is one of the higher subscriber rates. A number of somewhere around the 20% is kind of flashing in the area. But as I say, I think if we take these dollars and put some more effort into public education, the hope is to raise those numbers up to a little more across the board in the city.
So, you don't need a motion. I mean, I would not, personally, I would not be in favor of spending that kind of money to upgrade this system.
No, I just wanted
Based on the
to-
information that you provided.
And thank you for that. I really was just looking to see what the appetite would be from council if this appeared in the budget, and I'm getting a sense that it may not go over so well. And again, the goal would be to direct some of those dollars, I don't think we need all of them, but some of those dollars more towards public education materials and programs and getting that information out that way.
Anybody else?
No, I mean, I would agree with the chief. I think I would rather go that route and kind of, like you say, educate the people. And I know, Jeff, you say Notify Me, but a lot of people, my residents, they'll be like, what's that? And what's that? They have no idea what that is or what it's all about. So, I think if we're going to spend some of the money, I think that would be worthwhile.
Very good. Thank you for your input. I appreciate it.
Right,
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, brings us to traffic enforcement, item number 3, traffic report, Chief.
You have the monthly report. There's nothing of significance on it. Now that the weather has broken, we have gotten our educational speed trailer revamped and with new batteries, and we'll begin implementing that. We've started some other speed surveys as well in the city.
Right, any questions for the chief?
No.
Okay. For 3A, and I did receive an email from a resident the other day, and Traffic Task Force looked at the item as far as the concern for the two-way stop at Linden and Solon Boulevard. And I know that, Mr. Hobbs, you mentioned that in order to address the situation properly, you would need to do traffic counts, and you would prefer to do those while school is still in session.
That is correct.
So you'd be looking for the committee to give you approval to do a traffic count. Would that be within your retainer?
Correct.
Okay, so it wouldn't be any extra cost to do that.
Correct. The biggest question was the committee going to entertain the request to review that intersection for an all-way stop?
So would there be a motion to do so?
Sure, I'll make a motion to refer to GPD to look into the intersection of Sullivan Boulevard and Linden Drive and do a traffic study.
Second. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Meany?
Yes.
Mr. Patagino?
Yes.
And Mr. Russo?
Yes, thank you. Brings us to engineering, item number 4, Crown Castle small cell nodes. Carrie?
The engineering and planning departments have been working with Crown Castle. They have requested to install 3 small cell nodes within the right-of-way at 3 different locations in the city. The locations are Aurora and Pettibone Road at the corner of Grantwood near the traffic cabinet and new traffic signal poles. The second location is Som Center Road at Pettibone Road, and that's at Fire Station 3. The third location was Pettibone Road near Cromwell Drive. The proposed location is on the south side of Pettibone Road. There are representatives from Crown Castle here today to answer any questions from the committee. They
Okay.
are proposing to install a new utility pole with some equipment mounted onto the pole. And then I'll turn it over to Crown Castle to present any items that they want to
Right.
present.
Before they come up, how long have you been working with them on this particular project?
We've been meeting with Crown Castle, I would say, over a year, almost 2 years, to look at different locations that they had proposed within the city, some different installations that they were proposing, attaching on existing poles or installing new poles, or installing equipment, a cabinet with equipment in the right-of-way. We've been working with them. This seems to be the best proposal that they've submitted, where they're installing, putting in their own pole, and then the equipment would be mounted on the pole. And they've also, as part of this package, tried to look at the surrounding area and make sure that they're proposing poles that kind of match what's in the area. Like the Grantwood location, we have black signal poles in the black cabinet at that corner location, so they're proposing to install a black pole with their equipment on the pole. The other 2 locations have wood utility poles in the area, so they're proposing a wood utility pole in those 2 locations. And again, the equipment is going to be mounted on the poles.
Okay, if you'd like to come up, and as you do, state your name and obviously the company you're representing.
Hello, thank you, Councilman. My name is Paul Gilbert. I'm with Crown Castle, and this is Justin Butterfield from GPD, who's our engineer on the project.
Great, thank you.
And I actually brought a little handout, just kind of an overview of what exactly we're
Sure,
proposing.
and actually, if you have something that you want to show on the screen, Carrie will show you how to do that.
Problem.
You can just place it in the square.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Thank you.
This location here is the first node. It's on the corner of Som Center and Pettibone. the northeast intersection. This view right here is taken from the east of the intersection, looking back west. This is one of the locations where there's existing wood utility poles. We're proposing a 30-foot tall to the center line of the antenna wood utility pole with equipment on that pole structure. And this is a photo image of the sim here. So this is not there today. This is photo simulation into the drawing.
Okay. Any questions on this particular location? Okay, we're good.
Okay. Second location is at the intersection of Aurora and Pettibone. As Carrie mentioned, we wanted to match the existing infrastructure in the area, which were steel utility structures. This pole here is matched to those likings. It is again, a 35-foot tall pole structure to the rad center of the antenna. The equipment is mounted kind of concealed beneath a cage on the pole. Utilities are fed aerial over to the structure.
Okay. All right, any questions?
I think it would be informative to the residents. I mean, just, to kind of explain like what this is
Just
all about
technology.
and the
Absolutely.
technology and like why are we doing this
Sure.
and how it'll improve,
Sure. Happy
the
to do so.
quality of communication.
Yep. So what we are proposing is a small cell and fiber optic network. It is a series of 3 small antennas that are all linked via a fiber optic cable hung among the other utility lines that you're used to seeing on utility poles back to a tower. So these 3 sites that we're talking about are fed to SOM Center and then south on SOM Center to a tower in Twinsburg.
Okay.
That's where the signal from the 3 small antennas links up with the larger communications network.
Okay.
It's actually the water tank on Darrow Road and Post
Okay.
on the corner there.
On SOM and Post.
Yep.
The Twinsburg Tower. Gotcha.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And the real drive, the real purpose behind these small cell networks is to supplement the broader, wider wireless network. We like to say that they relieve congestion and that they complement the existing network. So as we see more and more people downloading YouTube videos and uploading photos of their dinner to Facebook and all that kind of good stuff, it needs more data. We find that we need more bandwidth to support that need. So installing a small cell network can help serve that need and offload that demand from the towers. So overall, there's a direct benefit to everybody that's within reach of the small cell antenna, and they get they get the benefit of the higher speed there. But there's a benefit to the wider community as well as it offloads the tower that's existing there.
So since I live at the north end of town, how is it going to help me?
Potentially, if that is carrying more of the traffic on the south side of town, then the other assets, the larger assets that are serving the north side of town, they're going to be freed up a little bit
Okay.
to serve you better.
Okay.
So they all work hand in hand.
Gotcha.
And the real drive is just this national trend. 70% of emergency calls now are made from a wireless device. So we need to be able to use our phones when we absolutely necessarily need to. And more homes don't have a landline anymore. They've gone full wireless. I haven't had one in 8 years. So that's really what's driving the need for this network. And we think they provide the benefit to the immediate area, benefit to the wider area, but it's also a smaller, much less intrusive way to bring that benefit to the network because they're small. They're like a 5-gallon bucket turned upside down. It's about the size of the antenna, and a small box equipment cabinet on a pole is about all it takes to make one of these work.
Right. Chief Island, you had a question?
Yes. Afternoon, gentlemen. We have a historical problem on our south side of town, Pettibone Road South, where wireless calls placed to 911 are picked up by the main tower in Twinsburg and directed to their regional PSAP, which causes multiple transfers before it can be transferred to our dispatch center. Is this small cell network going to exacerbate that problem by taking Solon signals and pushing them to the Twinsburg tower, or is it going to make the situation better?
So each of the antennas will have an emergency 911 address, and it is linked in with the emergency 911 system. So if an emergency call is made and it pings to that small cell, then the call will show up as coming from that small cell's address. So they should.
That in
help.
fact would improve the situation that we
Right.
have right now.
Okay.
Paul,
Correct.
what, does it matter what cell network you belong to? Verizon, Sprint, anything like that?
In this particular case, so Crown Castle is a neutral host provider. So we build the infrastructure and lease to our carrier customers. In this particular case, we have one carrier on board. We don't build speculatively. So in this case, we have one anchor carrier on board for these 3 sites. But
And who is that?
it's Verizon.
So anybody that has AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile wouldn't be able to connect to these towers?
Not these 3 at the moment.
They would need to contract with you to do
Yes.
that.
Could you add them?
We could.
The benefit is the fiber backbone to these small cell nodes will be there.
Right.
So to offload assets in the future, it would be easier to do so, because that fiber network would be there.
What we find is that the carriers' networks are not as similar as you would guess. And so while Verizon may have the need at these 3 specific locations, AT&T may not, and T-Mobile may not. So
So anything that Verizon or any of the cell phone companies are going to do are going to be based on the need, based on the feedback they get from their customers.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They have data showing them these 3 spots in Solon, our network needs help.
Right. And I would imagine the investment is significant enough that they're not just going to do this on a whim. They've got the data to support the need.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
This may be a dumb question, but you can't put them underground?
Oh, we have been trying for years, but no, not yet.
Okay.
The fiber optic, and then sometimes the electric utility that feeds them, those
Mhm.
wires we can do underground.
Mhm.
Typically, we try to mimic what the utilities are like that exist now. So
Mhm.
if those lines are currently buried, we typically bury ours,
Mhm.
but the antenna itself still has to be in the air.
Okay, and it causes no conflict with like CEI lines or any of that? I mean,
It doesn't.
Okay.
In fact, there are very stringent standards and safety distances and things that we adhere to. And
Yeah, because I know this one picture, it looked, well, I guess, okay, that's the traffic signal there, okay.
And what
And
is
the-
the typical size of the poles? I mean, do they vary in heights?
A little
I mean,
bit, but
depending
typ-
on where they're
Mm.
located, or what?
Yeah, sometimes, but typically about 35 feet in this region, 35 feet, give or take a few feet up or down.
These are 40-foot long poles. They'll be embedded 6 feet in the ground. The antenna to the center line of the antenna will be about 35 feet.
Well, and if
so.
it's fiber optic, why would you need to go higher than that if you're basically using fiber optics anyway?
Yeah, and the closer the antenna is to the phone, the faster they communicate. So
Mhm.
But you're talking, it's multiple components. It's the fiber optics and the cell nodes, right?
it is, yes. So the larger construction piece of the project is the fiber optic. I think 3 or so miles probably in total of fiber optic in the city, and then a little bit more as we head down to the water tower.
And that's all aerial fiber attached to existing poles. And I think there's a mixture of CEI, AT&T. I can't remember if it was Windstream.
So in other words, if the fiber was laid underground, this would be laid underground. If it's overhead, it's going to be overhead.
Correct.
Correct.
We like to try to make them hide in plain sight. So just as what the other utilities are doing, we try to mimic that.
Right. And then right now with state law, they regulate basically what you can do, correct?
That's correct, I think, yeah.
But we have always operated as though we're a partner in your community.
Oh, no, understood.
We want to
And
be here.
I think
Mm.
that is
for,
why I asked Kerry the question. I mean, and it's definitely appreciated the fact that you've been working with engineering, trying to accommodate and to blend this in with the community. Because I know that pretty much any other carrier could come into any community and do whatever they want, basically. the way the state law is written. But again, we appreciate the fact that you've been working with the engineering department to do so.
I have a question about, probably maybe more for Carrie. I mean, what prompted the city to want to do this, and is there thought of doing it, like I say, at my end of town, or what, was it for the,
It was initiated by Crown Castle, not the city.
oh, okay. So you guys came to the city and said, hey, I have this,
Yeah, typically one of our clients comes to us with, and in this case, these 3 spots that they need to supplement their network, and then they work with us to build it, and we work with the city to build it.
Yeah.
I thought Verizon had just put something in on one of the towers at CI lines at Som Center. We approved,
yeah, we did do something with Verizon, yeah.
they wanted to, you know how they add to the towers that are currently there? So, I mean, like the one at the south end, why would they want one so close, a node so close to that one? It's kind of right up the street from that development.
Unfortunately, I don't have information on their network. I can tell you that demand for data on the mobile networks
Is
is
growing.
increasing like a hockey stick, and so it's not surprising to me that they're supplementing that tower as well as a small cell network.
How many of these have you put in this area? Not Solon, but other cities? You have done other cities, or?
In the greater Cleveland area, 100 or so, Crown Castle has for 3 different wireless carriers. 40 or so in the city itself, in downtown area in the city of Cleveland, and then the other 50 or so in the suburban communities.
And then what kind of maintenance is there? Like, what do you guys take care? I mean, is there?
We do. We have typically once a year, sometimes twice a year, we send a technician out. He has a bucket truck. He or she rolls up to the site. They put some cones out to block traffic, and they go up and they inspect. They clean the equipment, make sure it's functioning properly. Most of the sites also have alarms on them, so if something, if it loses power or if a squirrel chews through the fiber or something like that, we get an alarm and a technician comes out. We have a technician in Cleveland and a technician in Akron.
Okay.
Any other questions? Great.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got one more location?
Correct, yep. And this is the 3rd location on Pettibone Road, west of Som Center, just southwest of the intersection of Cromwell and Pettibone.
Right, now, Mr. Palunas, who's a councilman in that ward, I think you had a couple of questions? Sure.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Can I move this over a little bit?
Sure, yeah, no problem.
I have a couple issues with the placement of the tower. If we could have the overhead camera, please. Okay, right here is where the overhead tower is going to be placed. I can speak from experience. I live approximately right here. My parents live approximately at the top of this blue square here. We all have Verizon. Never had a problem with any service or anything else. I always have the maximum amount of bars. That's just my personal experience. But I would like to know if this would be going in, why we couldn't move it over to approximately right here on this property where the tornado siren is, next to the tornado siren, so it'd be right there, or right here on a city property, or right here on the edge of Solon and Glen Willow. So we have several areas where it wouldn't be directly across from someone's house, it wouldn't be in front of someone's house, and it wouldn't be right, you wouldn't be able to see it directly from a residence. That's my concern. So I'm asking if we can move it. I have 3 locations. One would be right here on the property. We actually tore a house down here to put the spillway from a detention basin. This would be the first spot. Second spot would be right here, which would be the last property on the right-of-way before Glen Willow. And this is all industrial park here. And this is an empty lot right here that's not buildable. And the third spot would be right approximately here, which would be where the tornado siren is. So it'd be right next to the tornado siren. And that's actually on the corner of White Oak and Pettibone, which would be not be able to be seen because there's a fence there and it's actually almost on the past the house, so it's on the side of the house on White Oak. So you can't see it. That's why we put the tornado siren there. All those would be screened from residents, and I think from a personal perspective, they're trying to solve a problem that, in my opinion, doesn't even exist, because I've never had one resident complain about lack of Verizon service. I have Verizon, a lot of friends in this area have Verizon, and never had a problem at all, which is a compliment to the company. But so that's my request, that we move it either here, or here, if possible. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, and we're certainly open to,
Her, so you can give it back to her.
Great.
we're certainly open to investigating those 3 locations. I can't tonight tell you
Understood.
yes or no.
No, that's fine.
There are a whole lot of factors, coordinating utilities and
No,
RF
understood.
engineering. Okay.
And I wanted to preface too, with his comments here. I know one of the objectives with placing this node, it's hard to see in this aerial image, but there's, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. There's a tree line right here, just east of, and we showed in our drawing right here the parcel line. I'm not sure what properties it is, but we try to line the node up with that tree line.
So I think
It's in between 2 parcels, though. I don't think the house.
we'll go.
We could
We'll
certainly take a
evaluate.
look.
Sure.
Offline,
Mhm.
and should we follow up with Carrie?
Right, yeah, I would do that, because I think the committee will more likely than not take a look at the first 2 items, pass those, and hold the 3rd one,
Sure.
Okay.
is my guess. So, but yeah, if you can take a look at that and see if there's any options, that would be great. That would solve the councilman's issues. And if not, just, you know, if we can have the reasons why we would need to have it at that location,
Yep.
that would be great.
Yeah, because it's Som and Pettibone, and then Cromwell, and, I mean, the distance that we're gonna have it at Aurora and Pettibone to Som and Pettibone, that's quite a bit of distance, but we're having a 3rd one so close, and they kind of maybe even.
That's one of the reasons why I'm so hesitant to give you a yes or no.
No,
tonight,
that's
so-
fine. I just, but thinking about the 3 locations that you do have, 2 of the locations are within
Right.
a quarter mile of
Pretty
one
close to
another.
each
The
other.
other 2 are a mile and a half away from one another, so, yeah, so if it can be moved.
I mean, I'd just like to make one other comment. You know, I know that there's been a lot of, and we've had talks about it as a council in the city, you know, with all the different news media about cell towers and allowing cell towers. And, you know, I think, you know, the chief brought up a good point, in something, you know, is the issue with the residents, our Solon residents, who, when they call 911, it's pinging off the Twinsburg. And if this can solve that, you know, because in life and death situations, those seconds can mean an awful lot. So like I say, I appreciate, you know, Councilman Plunas' point of, you know, hey, my service is great. And I don't know, like I say, what prompted and who contacted you and said there's an issue with Verizon in this area. But I think one of the biggest reasons that I feel comfortable is because of what the chief said, you know, because I know that's been an issue, where it's going to the Twinsburg dispatch area and not going to our dispatch. So like I say, that makes me, you know, very, you know, comfortable in at least dealing with the 2 that we have.
All right, then,
I'll make a
there's
motion.
no questions. Entertain a motion?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Motion to prepare we need legislation for them to do this?
Yeah, we need to prepare legislation to allow,
Allow them to
Right.
install the
yeah,
utility
right on the bottom
poles.
of that last paragraph.
All right, I'll make a motion to prepare legislation to allow Crown Castle to install utility poles with pole-mounted equipment within the city's right-of-way at locations 1 and 2. Location 1, Aurora Road at Pettibone at Grantwood, and location 2, Som Center Road and Pettibone Road, Fire Station, near Fire Station 3, or at Fire Station 3.
Is there a
It's okay to
second?
do them together, right? Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call?
Mrs. Meany?
Yes.
Mr. Pedicino?
Yes.
And Mr. Russo?
Yes, and then we will hold the 3rd location for the next meeting.
I'd just like
Lentz?
to thank the committee for hearing me out on this, and
Not a problem.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okey doke. Okay, brings us to engineering. Item number 5, no turn on red Aurora Pettibone.
At last month's meeting, there was, the issue was brought up at the Aurora and Pettibone intersection that residents were having trouble with the no turn on red sign that was recently installed. We had discussed last month that we would talk about it at Traffic Task Force, and GPD had discussed a couple options, looking at different options like traffic pattern change or signal operation changed, but none of those additional signs, warning signs, are meant for that situation. GPD had noticed that we have another situation where we have no turn on red signs, and it's duplicated at the intersection. This is the intersection of Som Center and Solon Road, Som Center heading south. There's a no turn on red sign here at the signal head, and then on
It's
the
on the pole.
pedestal, there's another duplicated sign here on this pedestal. GPD had looked at this intersection. I didn't bring I did a screenshot from Google Maps today. The new sign is installed next to the signal head with the red dot, no turn on red, and there's been a couple complaints. GPD is proposing that we add a duplicate sign here on this lane designation sign here as you're approaching the intersection. It may help. It may have no impact, but it would help for enforcement issues, to have the double signage, and we do have that scenario at another location. If the committee has any questions.
Any questions from the committee?
I mean, I guess my only one, and I see, and I guess this came probably from, I don't know if it came from you, Mike, or not, but, or Ryan, that, a lot of times, probably this is sufficient enough, but I know in the past that's been a pretty high accident area, and I think, we're creatures of habit, and if we're used to, oh yeah, you can turn right on red, you don't look up, you just, you don't pay attention, our minds have too many other distractions, unfortunately, in this day and age. So I personally think it might be helpful, just to add that, onto the sign there, no right turn on red. Just because, like I say, people have been allowed to do it, and, you don't pay attention. And I don't know, from the chief's point of view, as far as enforcement, where they can say, oh, I didn't see it. Well, when you got two, and I don't know if that really makes a difference, you can say, hey, there's a sign here and there's a sign there. So I would be in favor of doing it, only because, like I say, I've heard from a number of people that they feel like, people really don't see it. So, like I say, I would be in favor of doing it. I know, Bill, you're not a sign person. But
Jeff, have any comments?
No, I kind of concur with Nance.
Is there a motion?
Sure, I'll go ahead and make a motion to have legislation prepared, amending the traffic control map for additional signage to restrict a right turn on red on Pettibone eastbound at the Aurora Road, Pettibone Road intersection.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Meany?
Yes.
Mr. Cuttesino?
Yes.
And Mr. Russo?
Yes. Okay, brings us to item number 6, Community Center Pool Pack. Don or Rich? Don't all jump at once.
Yes, the committee may remember, actually, we were here a few years ago, actually kind of notifying, we had actually made some repairs to the pool pack at that time, and they were designed to be temporary, and that temporary period has waned, and we actually, we were hoping to get 1 year out of it. We got about 3 or 4 years out of it, so we did get a lot of use out of it, but the time has come, I believe, to not repair it, but replace it. And what we're doing is just basically asking the committee's blessing to advertise for bids. This was in our capital improvements budget for 2017.
Right. And again, we did get the revised
Correct.
bid sheet
Yes.
with the corrections made to that. Any questions from the committee?
So, and I don't know who wants to answer this, Carrie, or if, So when Burgess and Nyepel or their sub checked this, they also decided that it would probably be beneficial to do an exterior boiler for the outdoor pool?
Well, both boilers are tied to the pool unit.
Okay,
The pool unit does a variety of functions, primarily dehumidifying the pool area and kind of controlling the indoor pool sort of atmosphere. But again, in both pools receive some benefit from that,
okay.
as far as either heating the water or something like that. So,
So I
as
guess-
alternates, we added 2 items, the UV system and a boiler.
Are you in agreement with that when they came up with this and saying, hey, while you guys are doing all this? I mean, do you feel it's, Rich or Don, do you feel this is?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We proposed
Oh,
this
you-
work to
okay.
be done and have
Okay.
worked closely with the engineering department,
Okay.
who in turn has worked with Burgess and Nyepel.
Okay.
Because hasn't there been issues with the boiler? Because I think there's been a couple times where some of the, I think the whirlpool or whatever you want to call that in there, that's been shut down because of boiler issue?
The community center as a whole has 3 boilers.
Right.
There are separate boilers that control each body of water. We do on occasion have problems with boilers, where they need repaired. But both of the larger boilers, the boilers that serve both the indoor pool
Right.
and then a separate boiler that serves the outdoor pool, one has reached the end of its useful life and the other is quickly approaching.
And just as a reminder, how long has the pool been, the community center been there?
The community center's been there 14 years.
I just have one other quick question. On our original, in our packet, this item, when they did the construction cost estimate, and I did talk to Don about this, and I see now the revised has dehumidification equipment. The original one had Dectron equipment. I guess I talked to Don about this, and I'm like, does that mean, is this some specific manufacturer? Dectron, which Don said it was. And I think my only comment is I think, I don't want to close us off. And Carrie, I know you want to say something to me, and that's fine. Go ahead, Carrie.
The specs will include, will not include any proprietary items. They'll be
Okay.
written in a manner so that, for anybody to bid on it.
Okay, I just wanted to make
And it'll
sure
be
that-
or approved equal for the way that the specs will be.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that it wasn't like we were getting into, okay, only this company can do it. I want to be able to, and I assume Don and Rich, you guys, and Matt, you'd like the flexibility and have it open where it can be. So yeah, I was happy, Carrie, to see that it was now changed to dehumidification equipment. But no, I'm excited about this. I know you guys are. You guys have really done a good job in keeping it, limping along. And as you said, this was all part of our 2017 budget to get this done. So like I say, I'm all for it, and, just do it at a time where you can keep Arthur Road open longer.
Jeff, do you have any questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Make a motion to prepare legislation authorizing the engineering department to bid the HVAC system, which includes the bid alternates for the UV system and exterior boiler, which is attached, under emergency, so we can get this done as quickly as possible.
Is there a second? Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Meany?
Yes.
Mr. Pedicino?
Yes.
And Mr. Russo?
Yes. Okay, item number 7, a request to post detour Richmond Road resurfacing project. Carrie?
The city has partnered with the Village of Oakwood to do a Richmond Road resurfacing from Columbus Road to the South Corporation line. They had opened bids on May 5th. There is an update to this memo that we had supplied. They would like to start construction. It'll be no earlier than June 26th. The duration of the project will be for 90 days. During that period of construction, they are proposing to close Richmond Road between, Solon Road. They're going to have a detour, and we are requesting to post this detour for the residents for that 14-day closure. The road will be open to local traffic, just no through traffic for those 14 days.
Any questions from the committee?
Carrie, I know since, this isn't really ours, Oakwood, but are you planning on having any sort of resident meeting or letting the residents on Richmond know?
I know John has been in contact with with the residents along there. I'm not
Okay.
sure if they're going to hold a residents meeting.
Okay.
I'll have to
Okay, just
check
as long
with
as they're
them.
aware. Okay.
I need a motion to approve that?
Sure, I'll go ahead and make a motion to prepare legislation approving the proposed detour in the city of Solon as authorized in the memo from John Bush dated May 4th, 2017 in regards to the Richmond Road resurfacing and storm sewer culvert repair. Does it need to be done under emergency? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And to have it done under emergency, since this
Start by
project will be
June
starting
26th.
in June.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Meany?
Yes.
Mr. Pedicino?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes. Okay, item number 8, status update report from the engineering department. Carrie?
Just a couple of items. The traffic signal project, all of the cameras are installed. I know Perham was out installing that TraffiSense camera on ports today, working on that camera. Since the replacement of those cameras, I haven't had any complaints for the signals in a couple weeks, so that's good news. The community center tennis courts, we opened bids last week, and those are being evaluated. We'll probably bring something to the committee shortly for that. And that's all I have for now.
Any questions from the committee?
Just real quick on the traffic signals. I mean, I've still seen at times, not this past Saturday, maybe the Saturday before, rainy. It was just about 8:30 in the morning on a Saturday. The light at Harper and Bainbridge. Nobody's in the lane to make a left into Nestle, yet the lights both turned left. So, I know you want me to call you, but it was a Saturday,
Right.
so,
Thanks. We can take a look at it.
okay.
And times of those rainy periods or misty rain, I have had some complaints, over the whole course of the traffic signal project on days like that. And by the time we get the complaint in and, we check it out,
Mhm.
everything's fine. So it could be an anomaly of the weather that happens. If it's a continual problem, though, we can take a look at it and make sure that the signals are working properly.
So I guess that's my question, though. Is it just going to be something that when the weather is like that the signals may not work properly?
It's not that they're not working properly, but they go under recall, and that's the safety, the safety feature. And my preference, and I'll let Mike talk about this too, that in periods of inclement weather or various weather conditions, I would much rather have someone have to sit through a signal when cross traffic isn't coming than the camera's not functioning properly, and then the phase is not serviced at all. So my preference is that they would go into recall. It's a safety feature. I'll let Mike.
I concur. That's the way they're designed, is when they get to a certain level of visibility that they're not getting proper detection, they go into that recall to make sure everybody's serviced, and you don't have drivers deciding arbitrarily that the signal is not working and then run a red light.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's, we spend a lot of money on these. I just, like I say, to have them still, I sit there and I go, you've got to be kidding me. No offense, and I'm not trying to, it's just really frustrating. And I know I have residents, and not just my residents, but the whole city, people still coming up to me that still have issues with, like, what is going on here? And
Right.
can we just go back to the old way?
And as that's why it's important that we know when the complaint occurred and what the weather was like, so we can take a look at the detectors and see if they need adjusted. There is only so much adjustment that we can do before they will go into that recall mode. But as long as we'll keep looking at the system, we'll keep looking at the detectors and try to keep adjusting it as best as we can.
Does the manufacturer, did they ever say that, oh, well, yeah, but, one issue may be weather, and if it rains too much, or if it's foggy, or if it's snowy, I mean, you might have issues with this. Was that ever mentioned to you guys when?
I think both video detection systems that are out there in the market, there's the real video detection, and then this is thermal camera detection. Both detection systems have some pros and cons. The advantage to the one that we chose was that we would not have interference with wires that are, when it's windy and wires are in the camera view, that would cycle the signal with regular video detection. The other issue was when in direct sunlight, when it casts shadows as the sun is coming over the intersection at times through the day, that would cause either the no detection or false calls, like we see when it's misty rain. Both systems have pros and cons, and we felt that choosing this one would eliminate some of those shadow issues and interference with the wires. They tell us that no detection system is 100% effective,
Right.
And with loops also, that the system that we had before, loops have some issues too,
Sure.
so.
No, I understand that.
you
I guess the answer then is, as much as we think technology should solve everything and be able to, the reality is you're going to get glitches, and, Mother Nature can cause issues, and I guess we all just have to kind of understand that. But thank you very much.
Right. But wasn't the main objective to improve the traffic flow on the main arteries, to improve the grading of some of these intersections that were like F to maybe D? They were not going to be perfect. I mean, that was the main reason.
No, I
It was not
understand.
to be
No, I know.
every intersection, people to be able to turn when
Right.
nobody's there. And I think we have to understand what the main purpose
Sure.
of these were for. And even the old system that we had
Right.
was not perfect. There were issues with that. So, and this was an attempt to improve the traffic flow on the main arteries.
That's exactly correct. I mean, money, 20, 30 years ago, if you needed additional capacity, you needed to improve traffic flow, you just build a wider road or build a new road. Now in the economy that we live in the world we live in, money is not unlimited. So the best way to try to get more capacity is squeeze it out of your existing infrastructure. You were exactly right with your point. The point of these traffic signal improvement projects is to improve the coordination between the signals, improve their operation as best as we can to get the most additional capacity out of the system that we have. Because we can't just go widen Som Center Road, which would solve the problem, but it would be really costly, and then there'd be lots of impacts. So the intent was to improve the technology to make it function better than the old technology, improve the traffic signal timings, and then improve the communication between the signals so that when you started through town, hopefully you keep going through town and don't stop at every light along the way.
Right. Mr. Howell, did you have a question? Or-
Yeah, Carrie had mentioned the tennis courts. I actually, and I apologize, I don't mean to offend anybody, but we actually, all the bids came in over 10% over what we had estimated. So I actually have a memo before, not safety, but finance on Monday to reject all the bids. We'd like to go out and rebid, just so you guys are aware. I mean, we'll bring it back to this committee if and when we get better bids, but unfortunately, they all were more than 10% over our estimates. So all those bids will be rejected.
Right.
Just want
And
to make
I know
you
you
guys.
want to get those started so you can get them all done before
Well,
the end.
that was kind of in. I didn't want to come late to this agenda. Wanted to make sure that we got on an agenda, and finance seemed to be the way to go with this one. So,
Right.
just want to let you guys know
Thank
that
you.
they will be rejected. So,
Okay.
Just
great.
notify 2 of the 3 people. So.
Yeah. And I have one other quick, and Mr. Hobbs, when you were talking about, traffic flow, I mean, are you feeling that you have, so the lights are basically timed to try to stay green? Like I work right over off of Aurora off of Som. I live up north end of town. So when I go down Som, as long as I'm going the speed limit, Chief likes that. Basically, it should stay green. Once I hit, is that how you're trying to time them?
Coming from the north end of town, you will likely hit a red light at the ramp intersections of 422. The way that the traffic signal progression is set up is to hopefully, as you turn right off of 422, that's the heaviest demand movement. That's the movement that has the biggest safety concern with not backing traffic up onto the highway.
Right.
Those folks that are making that movement are hopefully getting the green light all the way down. As you come from the north end of town, you will probably hit a red light, but then once you get the next green light, you should move through the system at the front of that travel band.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll make a
Answers?
motion to adjourn, how's that?
Okay, there you go. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Mrs. Meany?
Yes.
Mr. Pedicino?
Yes.
And Mr. Russo?
Yes. Meeting adjourned.